Yeah, right here. Yeah, do I prefer newer cars versus older cars in terms of driving? I would obviously say newer cars. They're obviously going to always drive better. A Porsche 918 I have is one of my favorite driving cars. I love the Porsche 918 even more so than some newer cars. But I think, like I said, when I'm driving these cars, I kind of say, you know what, I'm not going to forget everything that the 918 does good. I'm just going to drive this car for what it was. And if you put yourself back in the 80s and say, no, I'm driving the fastest car that could be built in the 80s, I think that feeling, to bring that feeling back, is what really thrills me more than driving a new car. Because new cars are all eventually going to be electric, they're all going to be pretty much the same. You're not going to get the sounds, you're not going to get the smells, you're not going to get the charm, the little rattles, the wastegate going and you're driving, the tires spinning in first, second, and third gear. I mean, those are the things that I love about these cars. And yeah, there's always going to be, obviously a newer car is going to completely be faster, but all those things, you know, people say, hey Bill, you know, my Apple Watch, you know, does everything better than your Rolex. You know, it has GPS built in. I bought this thing for $40. I said, well, my Rolex watch, I don't know why these things go for 50,000. They have nothing electronic in it, but it's that feeling, it's that charm, it's a mechanical thing. It's the best somebody can make with just gears and gadgets. And I think that's where these cars are always going to be loved for that. Like going a horse or something like that. Yeah.
So when you drive these cars, do you ever feel just worried, like can you just relax while driving them, or do you just always have like anxiety about it or something?
Yeah, do I have anxiety when I drive these cars? Can I be relaxed when I drive these cars? You know, that's a good question, because when I bought these cars, they weren't as valuable as they are today. These cars are worth a lot more than I paid for these cars. But I think, you know what, I say I can always fix the car. You know, it's more about the people, the enjoyment. You know, if I was not going to drive the car, I think I'd be very anxious. I would feel like, why am I not driving my car? I didn't get it for that reason. So I still drive these cars just as much as I ever do. And just say, you know what, just be careful, and they can be fixed. You know, it's kind of an attitude, I think. Yeah, right here.
Yeah. I was just wondering, so they have like carbon fiber and stuff, that's all really nice. Was that like the first that Ferrari like brought in carbon fiber? Did they have like previous models? And if it is, how did it like change the way of the built?
Yeah, good question. A question about the carbon fiber. This is actually, you can see the little yellowing occurring here on the doors. The question about carbon fiber. This is more of a carbon Kevlar car. They didn't really have too much carbon fiber at the time. That was kind of new. That came in with the F50, we'll get to. But if you look inside the car, this is a carbon Kevlar material, kind of like what they make out of bulletproof vests. Pretty modern at the time. Same material they used in the 288, because this is kind of derived a lot from the 288, so it's not a lot of the same material. But more of a carbon Kevlar material rather than look at the car, it's like, okay, it's kind of a cool car. I think when it came out, 0 to 60 in 4.3, less than actually some cars got 3 in the 3s, top speed of almost 200. I think when the car came out, people weren't even calling it a car, they were calling it a spaceship. People were paying millions of dollars for these cars in the 80s when it came out. People were like mortgaging their houses to buy these cars. I think it was just so different than anything that came out. It's just, if you put yourself back in that time frame, which I keep referring to, I think it's that makes this car very special. And now that the internet's exposing those feelings, you can go back into an old Car and Driver. I totally recommend going into the Car and Driver magazine when this car was introduced and see what's way too fast. So now Group B's gone. Now when 1990s come, what are we going to do? You know, we had such success with these supercars. We don't really have a competition going on anymore. You know, what are we going to do? So Ferrari said, you know what? We're really successful in F1 races. You know, we kind of competing with Porsche here. Let's just forget about all that competition, and let's just make an F1 car that you can drive on the street. So they basically spoke to all their customers. They researched all their customers, sent out surveys that said, you know what? We think F1 is just the pinnacle of cars. The best you can do. Can you make us an F1 car that we can drive on the street? And I said, yeah, I think we probably can. So this is that car. This basically took the F1 car from the 90s. It was in a 333 SP car. Basically, the same exact engine in there, 5 valves per cylinder, revs to almost 9,000 RPM. V12, again, you guys asked me what's my favorite. This is a V12 engine, 12 cylinders. Again, we talked about 8, so this is now got double the cylinders that the Porsche has. This is a carbon fiber car now. It's a carbon fiber tub. Getting back to your earlier question about carbon fiber, if you kind of get the light just right, you'll see the alligator texture. Some people call it orange peel. It's actually not orange peel in the paint. It's actually the alligator texture of the carbon fiber of the car. You'll see that. You see all that. So it's kind of got some cool stuff. So let me open this. I actually need some helping hands to open this because it's kind of a little tricky. And then we'll start it, and then I'll give you my little story, and then we'll do the questions. Okay, if you can imagine a single cockpit in the middle, imagine an F1 car from the 90s, you know, the person sits in the front. That's what this car is. They basically just put a street body on it. It's exactly the F1 car underneath, down to the springs inside the car to get the weight off the wheels so the car tires respond very fast to bumps. That's called unsprung weight, you might have heard that. Now carbon fiber, you look at the fender flare, fender wells, and well, that's carbon fiber, the whole body. The whole car is made out of this same exact material. Carbon fiber tub, just like the Courier GT, one of the first cars to do carbon fiber. And I think people bought this car, it's like, you know what, you kind of nailed it. It's an F1 car for the street. We think F1 cars are the ultimate. Thanks for making this car. Again, that Group B stuff's all that. Now just, what's the next definition of a supercar? It's an F1 car you can drive on the street. That's what the F50 is. Super rare car. Only 55 US cars is a US car. Let me start it up and then we'll go from there. Okay, so obviously the different sound, there's no turbos in here, so you heard the engine a little bit more. Like the other car, I revved it to 4,000. This car revs to almost 9,000. So if you can picture that sound that you heard at 4,000, more than double that. Here's my quick story. So I have a friend that I met in the ranch that's been deaf from birth. He's probably in his 40s, totally deaf since birth. And we communicate by texting each other on the phone. He's like, so he texted me, we're texting, just right across from each other. He's like, Bill, this F50 is my favorite car. Can you give me a ride in it? I'm like, sure, let's do it. So I take him out on the road, I know he's deaf, and so I'm revving as high as I can, 9,000, we're accelerating, and I'm like, wow, how's he doing, So we stop the car, and he gets out, and I see he's got like a tear coming down his eye. I said, you okay? You okay? So he texts me, he's like, I heard it. I'm like, you heard it? And a totally deaf guy, he said he heard the car. And he was very emotional about this, and I actually got a little choked up myself. And apparently, because the engine's attached to a carbon fiber tub that we're both sitting in, I guess the vibration of the engine, revving at 9,000, somehow got into him. And he said he heard the car. So that's my F50 story. Okay, so let's, questions on the F50? Yeah, right here. Yeah, question is, if something breaks on this car, and he mentioned the Enzo I have, but something broke on that. You know, how do you get parts for this? You know, fortunately, Ferrari still makes parts for their supercars. They're pretty easy to get. Not easy to get, sometimes you have to wait to get it. But yeah, all of their supercars, they'll still treat you just as you were as an original owner. So I would say parts are still fairly easy to get for this car. Some parts you can't get. I couldn't get the mufflers. They call one aftermarket mufflers. I couldn't get them. And then I was called all around, and actually the place up in Newport said, you know what, we have a pair of these mufflers that somebody bought like 20 years ago, and they never picked them up. And they've been sitting in our parts department for 20 years. So I was able to get the original mufflers on the car. We got certified by Ferrari, which is a very unique car, a very original car. So good question. Yeah, let me go back here. Yeah. How would I compare the V12 engine to this, to the Enzo? The Enzo engine's got a way more low-end torque, way more low-end power. You have to rev this car to over 5K to get any power out of it. The engine and the Enzo, not so much. It's a bigger engine. I think it's 5.7 versus this is under 5. So I would say low-end torque. It's easier to drive on the street because of that. I don't have to rev it really high. More streetable car, the Enzo, than the F50. This is an F1 car. I mean, I don't know if they would ever do an F1 car for the street. You probably saw Mercedes with their Project One was trying to do an F1 car for the street. They didn't quite get it right. They actually had to put electric motors in there to fill in the low-end torque, so it's not even close to an F1 car anymore. So I think this will probably be one of the last times the manufacturer tries to do an F1 car for the street because they're just so different. And primarily that low-end torque. I'll get to you in a second. Let me get some of the other people down here. Hold on. I got a new guy here, good? Going up, what was my childhood dream car, and do I still feel the same way about that? I would say the 959 and the F40, probably my childhood dream cars, and that's why I got those cars. Less so the F50. I remember when the F50 came out, I was older, but I think when cars came out, when you're like, you know, teenager, 15, 16, I think you remember those cars probably more than anything else, and maybe even when I was younger, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I remember some of the cars at that time. But I think because of the age I was at the time, and I was really into supercars, probably those two cars. Good question. Yeah. My favorite era of design of cars, I would probably have to say, if we're just looking at the supercars, I would probably have to say 2010. I think I like the 918, the LaFerrari P1. We'll have those cars here, actually. I think those cars are starting to get into some real organic shapes, especially the LaFerrari. 918 a little less, but people love the 918. People that don't even know cars, they said that 918 is like my favorite car. I don't know why, it just looks so cool. So I say, I think the design, I think the Carrera GT is a great design. It's a little weird when you put the roof on it, but I would say, yeah, 2010 is probably. Good question. Yeah. Okay, well, let's save that question for later, but the question was between the EV110 and the F50 V12, which one wins? That's a tough one. We'll start it, and you guys can tell me. But keep in mind, this thing's got some good stories, and I'll get to those stories quickly when I get to that car. And it also has 4 turbos. This thing started the whole thing with Bugatti coming back, and I'll get to that story. But that's a good question. Let's wait until we start it. You guys can tell me. Anybody down here have any questions? All right, let me go back. Yeah, back there?
Since the F50 is an F1 derived motor, do you have to take care of it differently or maintain it differently?
Yeah, since the F50 is an F1 derived motor, do I have to take care of anything differently? I got a good story on that. Actually, the car wouldn't idle. I couldn't get it to idle. And I called Paul at Ferrari, and he said, you know, it's probably the camshaft sensor. They use F1 technology for that. We sell it. Those camshaft sensors like $1,600, a little tiny part. I'm like, oh, geez, really? $1,600 for that? He goes, you know what? You can get them on eBay for $35. The exact same part. It's a Bosch part. And he was totally right. I went out to eBay, he gave me the part number, I searched on eBay, I got the part for $35. Ferrari sells it for like $1,600, and the car totally worked perfectly after that. So, you know, it's funny, Ferrari actually tries to sell you their top-end parts, but are they easy to maintain? Yeah, you know, I would say you can still get parts for them. It is an F1 derived motor, but even the F1 cars were using some parts from the street cars back then to keep the cost down. So, good question. Yeah, right here.
If there was one thing you could take about this car, what would you bring into like today's car world, like of this car?
Oh, what would I bring into today's car world about this car that maybe we're not seeing today? I would probably say it's just a high revving V12. I mean, that's kind of what Gordon Murray did with the T50. I think that's, I would like to see, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be possible now with regulations and so forth, but if I was going to bring this car back, a lightweight version, super lightweight, maybe a 2,500 pound V12, you know, 15,000 RPM, red light, something like that. Be a super fueling car, but low end torque. And if they want to put an electric engine to take care of that, I'm fine with that, as long as it doesn't add too much weight. But I think the spirit of the V12, the sound of it, yeah. Good question. Yeah, back here? Yeah, so basically, what do I feel about how cars are going today? The F80, for example. F80 came out. In my opinion, the F80 is kind of like a retro of the F40. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. It kind of has a little bit of that styling to it. It has a V6 turbo. It doesn't have the V12 anymore. The feeling is being that, hey, we used those engines in our F1 cars, so now you can still drive an F1 car technology on the street. So I guess the people buying those cars are the same feeling, hey, I could buy and drive an F1 car on the street. That car, I'm not a fan of its styling so much. I mean, I would have thought they would have done something more exotic than what they did with the F80 that just came out. I think time will tell. I mean, people dissed this car when it came out. Maybe 10 years from now, people might say that F80 is brilliant. You know, we don't get it now, and maybe it will be because it's so different than anything else they've done before. I don't like to question Ferrari. They've been right most of the time. So I think that F80 might be a winner. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah, back here? Okay, yeah. He's asking, he doesn't think there's any cops here. Have I pushed this car to a limit? I don't see my CHP friend here. Yeah, so let me tell you that story. This is a true story that you guys will not believe this story. So I'm showing this car at the Quail, F50 at the Quail, and the Quail ended, and I'm pulling out, and there's a bunch of CHP guys out at Monterey. And they say, sir, you stop right there. I said, oh shoot, what did I do? You know, they must have caught me doing 100 on Highway 1 or something. And they're waving all the cars on, and Nina was out there, she was actually on the road. She was in front of me, and they say, you stop right there, sir. They stopped the traffic on Carmel Valley Road, okay? In both directions. And they said, come out here. I said, okay, what's going on? And here's CHP guys, okay? They're young guys, probably in their 30s. They said, sir, floor it. They go to me. CHP guy, I said, excuse me? They said, floor it. So I floored it, and it probably hit maybe 130 on Carmel Valley Road. And they're just waving at me and hooting. And these are CHP guys in uniform. I probably shouldn't tell that story, I guess. But, I mean, I guess they were just so bored. They made it super safe. Obviously, they cleared out all the traffic. So that's probably the fastest I've gone with a bunch of people watching me during Car Week in Monterey. Good question. Yeah, right down here? Yeah. The question is, how often do I maintain these cars to still feel safe? Given that they're, I mean, I guess my number one thing is the tires. People tell me don't get a tire that's older than 5 years. I mean, even if you're not driving on it. So I would say the most important thing in terms of safety is the tires. If I'm going to take the car out on the track, I'm going to make sure that it has newer tires, newer than 5 years. And you guys heard about Paul Walker and the Ferrari F50 and all those stories. And that's all came down to tires. So let me just make sure I get some other people here that we haven't gotten before. Right here. Yeah, and I said the F40 was a thrilling experience. Do I apply that thrilling experience to the F50? I would say the V12 revving is probably way more than you're going to get out of the F40. My story about the deaf guy here in the car, I would say if anything, it's that V12 revving almost 9,000 that you're not going to get in that car. The sound and the vibration of that is probably way more thrilling than the F40. Good question. Yeah. Biggest car that turns heads of cops it would be the Enzo. Yeah, I would say when I take the Enzo out, people they all know what it is. And I have some stories about that I could tell later about taking it out at night, hoping that nobody would see it on YouTube the next day and Instagram. Because people are just taking their phones out and they said, we saw an Enzo at 2 o'clock in the morning, what the heck? And I thought I was okay. Let me get some questions down there. I don't think we've got you before.
So the F40 has around 1,300 units produced, but the F50 has almost less than 4 times as many. Could you explain why that is?
Yeah, the question is, why did they produce so many F40s, almost 1,300, and why so few F50s? I think the Ferrari customers, they kind of spoke about that. Like, you know what, you told me you were only going to make 200 F40s and you made 1,300. So I think Ferrari got a little, they said, you know what, maybe with the F50 we should do something. So they only made 55, 349 total. So I think it was that reason that, if we're going to make them buy it on a 2-year lease, we're going to invite people to buy it, we're going to make the car, like we said, we're only going to make 349. So I think it was basically the customer feedback. Why do you make so many F40s? Good question. Yeah.
What's the story behind you buying that F50? What did you have to do until I get it?
Yeah, story behind me buying the F50. So real quickly, obviously I wasn't one of the people introduced to the 2-year lease because I bought it many years later. So the person that had it lived in Georgia, state of Georgia. He had 2 of them. I asked a friend of mine to try to find an F50. He says it's like impossible to find. They never go on the market. But I know a guy in Georgia that has 2 of them. One's a driver and one's a museum car. So his name was Dax. We talked to the guy for like 2 years to try to get him to sell the car to me. And he finally decided to sell it to me. It wasn't so much the money. He says, I want you to drive the car and I want you to show the car. And if you can promise me that you're going to drive it and you're going to show it, I will sell you the car. That was more important to him than the money he got out of the car. That shows you how much of an enthusiast he was. Yeah, let me just make sure, is anybody else that I didn't get yet? All right, go ahead. What was the biggest reason behind me adding an F50 to the collection? I think it really fit the hole I felt I had. I had the Enzo and the F40, and I just felt, I actually had the F50 on my list, number 1, but they were so hard to get. So it took me a really long time to find a good car. But I think it's just the kind of, that same thing. It was the best car they could do. I don't have one. I'm an engineer. I like that philosophy. It fit into all that. So yeah, that's the reason. Yeah, one more?
Are there any other cars that compare to like the F40 or F50 that are modern day cars?
Yeah, any other cars that compare to the F40 and F50 that are modern day cars? All right, let me give you a quick story here because we're going to get to the XJ220 next. McLaren F1, you guys probably know what a McLaren F1 is. Very hard to get, there's only about 60 of them. We called about 5 McLaren F1 owners in the area because we really wanted to have a McLaren F1 here. Now, by the way, these 3 cars that we have here, they're also selected by Top Gear magazine. Top Gear magazine had the XJ220 as their second choice, the McLaren F1 was top choice. We were this close to getting the McLaren F1. Then the LA fires came. And a lot of those owners either had a house there or they were related to somebody there, and they all turned us down. I think that event just made people think differently, and we couldn't get an F1 after that. I think the fire had something to do with that. We would love to have an F1 here, but after learning about this car, it was the second choice on the Top Gear, and our second choice too. We actually are pretty excited to have this car, and you'll see why when we start it up. Yeah, she knows. Okay, so let's get the prizes out. I'm sorry, rewards. Okay, so I got 3 F40 models here. The first one is a 1996 first edition car. It is pretty hard to get. He's kind of drooling over that one. Hopefully they pick me. The reason for the F50 to bring F1 car technology to the street. Again, the Group B's gone, so we need other reasons to make supercars now.
Thank you for watching my San Diego Automotive Museum Decades of Trifecta video. This is video number 4 of the Ferrari F50. You may also like to watch the other 5 cars in this series. I also have a video of an interview with 1988 BMW M5 and a 1995 Porsche 911 Carrera. Have a great day.